we're happy to announce our second live event this year. On Tuesday, the 14th of November, we're going to be hosting Alex Lelch from Lelch Audio, also the owner of the Lowlands, a new wedding event center in St. Paul. Jordan Diorio will join me as a co-host for the first time. She is the podcast host of The Refund, and we're going to ask Alex all kinds of questions about being a serial entrepreneur, his immigration story to the United States, as well as starting two businesses and running both of them. So if you're interested in all things business, as well as a networking event within the construction industry, please join us that night. Again, that's the 14th of November. All details can be found at CuriousBuilderPodcast.com. This episode is brought to you by Alpine Hardwood Flooring. They've been our partner now for over a decade, installing all our wood floors on all our new homes as well as our remodels. And on a personal level, Adam and Anthony Jinkala, the owners, are just absolutely amazing people. They've been so supportive of my career as well as doing anything we need to make sure that our clients are happy. And they work so well with our other vendors and trade partners at not only protecting their product, but also ensuring everyone else's looks great. So if you're looking for a wood floor or for a refinish, I highly recommend Alpine Hardwood Flooring. Find them at alpinehardwoodmn.com or alpinehardwoodmn on Instagram.
And if we had the right style and structure client and I felt comfortable and they trusted me, I want to help guide them and give them my true opinion and not just say, oh, yeah, that looks good because I'm nervous they like it and I don't.
All right, welcome to the Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today I'm joined with Joe Braun and Danielle Yegge from Style and Structure. Welcome, guys.
Thanks. And just a slight correction, pronounced Braun.
Is it really?
It is.
Really? Even though it's spelled Braun?
Yes. Yeah, it's spelled Braun, just in the German way.
Interesting.
So, knowing him for over 10 years, the first 4 years, I thought it was Braun. And he heard me one day, like 4 years into knowing him, being in a sales builder relationship, and I introduced him, hey, this is Joe Braun. And he goes, excuse me? I thought you knew me better than that.
That's funny. I mean, for the audience, his name is spelled B-R-A-U-N. We should post a poll and see how many people would pronounce it Braun versus Brown.
See, our family refers to people that pronounce it Braun as cavers.
That's funny.
The best part was we were doing the parade of homes one time, and there was a family that came in. They filled out a registration card, and it had his last name. And I go, excuse me, how do you pronounce that? And they said Braun. I was like, this is the constant debate.
It is really a debate. There's somebody down at Cambria Countertops, and it's Brian Brown. And I met him, and he looked at my name tag, and the first thing he asked is, how do you pronounce it?
Yeah, I like how I like how he asked you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, obviously my name is Mark, but sometimes people will spell it with a C. And it's funny because most people are K's, but you see a C every once in a while and they'll be like, how do you spell your name? And you're like, oh, that's a red flag. They're a C.
They're a certain sort.
Well, now that we've figured out how to spell each other's last names, mine is Williams. There's really no way to mess that up. Tell us a little bit about you. Obviously, I'm familiar with you. I think you guys have one of the best names in the business, Style and Structure.
Thank you.
For those that haven't met you, you guys can check out our YouTube channel, and you'll see Danielle obviously is a beautiful woman, and Joe is a strong, robust, building-looking man. And you guys fit your respective stereotypes in your title very well. But all kidding aside, what I love about your name is that the name, Style and Structure, 2 words, I can immediately tell what you stand for in 2 words. Was that, I assume, deliberate? Or walk me through a little bit how you even named your building company.
It's not easy. We just brainstormed, and we were writing down name after name, and we had pages of them. And it just kind of came back. And I really think, it really fits Danielle and I because we are 2 opposite people on opposite ends of the business. And yeah, that's how it started.
Well, I think it's funny. It's like naming a child, right? It's like sometimes you both have different opinions. I might love a name, and then Joe's like, no. I'm like, are you kidding me? So it took us some time going back and forth, but it's so great when you come up with a name that you're both saying like, yes, that's it too. So we knew it was a winner when we both agreed on it.
Did you ever wonder if it should be Structure and Style versus Style and Structure?
Not really. This just sounds better.
I agree with you. And I mean, one of the things that I think is a superpower for you, and I think would be interested to know as you guys get more into the questions here, but I always feel like anytime you have women in construction, women in business, I just think it's a more powerful tool because guess what? Our clients are 80, 90% women make the decisions in our homes. And the fact that in your leadership and your ownership and in your company, you guys, I feel, are predominantly women. It's just interesting to me that, of course, people are focusing on style. And that's usually the questions our female clients are asking us, right? They're saying, hey, we're attracted to this Pinterest board, these looks, this stuff. And of course, the Mister is usually saying, like, how sturdy are these girders? What's your truss layout? Those types of questions. Not always, but it's a major stereotype both ways. But obviously, style and structure, I would also, from a marketing standpoint, for sure recommend that, considering the demographics of who we work for.
Yeah. And I think for us, it was not only defining kind of our individual roles as what we bring to the company, but it's also our process. I think, a lot of the design elements of a home get put off till later. Well, let's just focus on the architectural structure right now. We'll get into all the design details, the tile and stuff later. We really do take a different approach. We do that right up front. We want to understand our customer's style and all of those different features for a few different reasons. One, we believe that style affects the structure. If they're loving this like built-in nook, we want to incorporate that when we're focusing on the layout. But then separately, style affects the budget. So if I know a customer wants to deck their house out, we might not be going crazy on the square footage. Let's scale that back a little bit so they can get all the details they want in the home. So we think it's important to have it really from day one.
Agreed. We've always tried, and I think part of it was we haven't committed to it, but now we won't start a client's home until we've made all the pre-selections. I mean, I know it's shocking, right? Yeah, the people listening to this are mostly probably builders as well. And they're like, oh, we would love that. But the idea that you would start a house without having everything figured out is, to me, what we used to do 10, 15 years ago, because we wanted to get it going. The speed is important. But you can't really accurately tell somebody what their house is going to cost, or even really how long it's going to take to build, unless I have everything selected on the front end. But you also have to commit to that builder as well. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we've done a better job of messaging to our clientele now that by committing to us early in the process, we're going to remove some of the ambiguity, because we're going to get you into our process, into our style selections, if you will, and really go all the way through so that when we send it out for pricing, we're pricing out your actual selections.
Yeah.
Do you guys do, I assume, the same thing?
We do. And I think that just eliminates the frustration of what people historically have with builders. It's like, what do people dislike about building and remodeling? It's all the surprises, all the extra costs. We started at this price, and by the time we were done building, it added up by so much. And it's like, if you can get your selections done before you start, that eliminates all of those questions. And sure, there's going to be things that pop up or changes you might want to make, but to minimize those is going to be huge. And the way you do that is having the selections all signed off before we start dig.
Have you found that, obviously the one con of that is, but it's really, a client says, hey, my budget is $2 million. And you can tell by their style, they're selecting a lot of really nice things. And you're like, well, I'm hopeful, because we're optimists, because we're builders, you have to be. If you're a pessimist and a builder, you're in the wrong industry. And so, you then submit everything out for bid, it comes back, and your $2 million hopeful bid is 2.3, 2.4, but it's all based on their selections. When you go back to them, what avenues do you have to change now? Because we have selected the things that you picked. Do you find that the client now is more open to that overage because they're like, well, I love that tile. I love those white oak cabinets. I love those inset soft close drawers. Even though it's over, they realize, well, that's what I picked. How have you navigated that? Because now you have less people to blame. And obviously in our position, we're not trying to blame the client, but we are showing them that based on your selections, that is the reason this home is more expensive. How would you like to solve this as a team?
Yeah, and that's the really tough thing. Like, it's hard for people to say, this is my budget, because they feel, gosh, the builder's just going to spend whatever I tell them they can spend, and that's going to be the price. So you bring up a good point. They make the selections, and now it's 2.3, and they say, no, our budget really was 2. And we'll say, well, okay, now we can go back and we can design this and give you a $2 million home. You might have to change a few things, and there's some concessions. Or maybe they say it's 2.1 or 2.2, but we really get to know then their actual budget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I also think it's just really understanding your client. Every time we have a homeowner, we change our process just a little bit, because you learn something at each job. And some of it is those qualifying questions. How important is budget really to you? Or how important is the design? Because we get customers all the time, they're like, sure, I'm aiming for a $2 million budget, but ultimately, like, this is my dream home. I want to get what I want to get. And then you have some that are strictly on a budget. In fact, if you can get them $500,000 lower, they would love that. And so we really do try to dive in and explain that to them. Most people's budget is not the design they're asking for. So what is more important? Do you want me to show you an all-in scenario? Do you want me to compare that? So I think a lot of times we're going back with 2 different proposals with customers. So we just had one. We do remodels and new builds. And it was a remodel. She wanted to do a whole house remodel with a 2nd-story addition. And we're like, okay. And she wanted to stay at a certain budget. And I think we were about $500,000 more. And we knew when you have that much of a difference with the budget, you know, as they're asking for stuff that it's going to be more. So we kept explaining, this is above what you're asking for. We can certainly design and talk through options. So we got there. We presented the pricing. There's sticker shock, especially with her husband. He's like, we're not going over the budget. So we turned it around. We presented something, right at $1 million where they wanted to be, but it didn't incorporate everything. And so the homeowner's like, well, we were asking for Anderson 400, and now you have Anderson 100s. And we were asking for this, and now you don't have that in there. Like, we are showing you what we can do for $1 million. And I think when we do that approach, it usually sometimes ends up somewhere in the middle. And yeah. But that's what people have to understand. It's never gonna be exactly what they want with that budget that they throw out.
I mean, very rarely do you go through the design process in our experience and end up not building. It's really how bumpy is that readjustment into the atmosphere, coming back from, planet Mars, if you will, for expectations. Even the best job that we can do, I mean, we do this for a living. We do this all the time. And I don't know if you find yourself doing this, but, I sometimes go into a meeting where we're over budget and I feel stressed because I want to please them. I want to give them. It's not that I don't want to give them all the things that they want. Nothing would be easier to walk in and be like, we nailed it. You got everything you wanted for the budget. In 20 years, I don't know if that's ever happened, actually. So I don't know why. Man, that's why we're optimists, I guess.
But what I really like about that is it forces us to be more creative.
Yeah.
We had a buyer one time, and her saying was, this is a non-negotiable. Everything was a non-negotiable. And we were so far over budget, we had to dial it back. And there was a lot of tears. And, I think the end result is we got a lot more creative with things. And it turned out better than it might have had she had an unlimited budget.
I agree with you on that, Joe, because I think there's certain constraints, right? People are a constraint, designers, architects, the land. I mean, sometimes the lot itself has a huge part to play in what the house looks like, right? And, what it's going to be shaped like. But obviously the budget, right? And as you get more creative, maybe it is different. But I think when it becomes a reality versus, let's say, artwork on paper, the reality is always something real. And then it has a chance to become a home versus a house because, they're embodying it, right?
Yeah.
So
it's funny when you say the tears because that's tough. That's a tough conversation because a homeowner, whatever their budget is, this is one of the biggest purchases they're going to make in their life. And for them to feel like they're compromising, there's sometimes they're like, well, then I just don't want to do this. And you really have to help them understand, like, okay, it might not be what you originally thought, but we can make this great. And now that homeowner says all the time, for example, like built-ins, they're super expensive. They just are. And we switched out a ton of her built-ins for fun, creative wall details. And then she put furniture pieces for the storage. Saved her a ton of money. And now she claims that she likes it better because 1, she could get really cool wall details. And 2, most people's styles change so often. Having a furniture piece allows you to switch things up, rearrange a room. So it worked out for the better, but to your point, it wasn't without some tears.
And I think you're right, though. A lot of times you'll, let's just use this example again of $2 million. You design at, $2 million. It comes in at 2.5. They have the sticker shock. Usually 1 of 2 things happen. We come back, it's a week or 2 of kind of value engineering, figuring out some different options, letting them really get comfortable with it. You and I have been working on the prices for a couple of weeks and we're kind of seeing it and we're like, oh boy, they need some time to process it too. I try not to make all those decisions right in that first meeting because they're still processing it. Yeah. And then usually those 1 of 2 things happen, right? They come back and they will add the things back in at the beginning because they know that they want them, or they cut everything out and then during the build, they add them all back in. I don't know if I've ever seen it where they cut it and it stays out. It's almost like they get to the point where they feel comfortable with it, but then as they get into the build, they add it back. However, that is not the best journey for the client or the
No,
team.
it really isn't.
So is that accurate? Do you feel like?
I agree.
Yeah.
'Cause they like to take it off in chunks.
Well, they swallow the big number first.
Yeah.
Now those smaller numbers are easier to swallow.
And that's tough because for our approach, we're super transparent on the front end. And so there's some builders who will actually do it that way. They won't include a lot of the additional things or the selection allowances that they know these homeowners are probably going to spend because, whether people like it or not, they do understand people like to bite it off in chunks. To me and my personality type, that would be more frustrating. I'm like, give me the number. I'll figure it out. If I need to pull back, I will. But I want to see everything up front. And that's how we...
Because do you think it's an accurate statement to say that I think when you interview your clients at the end, the thing that they dislike the most is change orders that they don't control. I think everyone understands, like if you add a pool and there was no pool, like it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But, when you come back to them and you say, maybe we didn't do proper design. Maybe you didn't allow us or pay us, or really at that point you hadn't chosen, either one of our companies at that time, and you were bidding out with multiple people. Ultimately, you're going to have to plug in for more of a variance during the build. Because now at this point, unless you have accurate designs for everyone to bid off of, no one knows what the other person's bidding. And now back to your point, Danielle, maybe someone, I think an easy one would be appliances. Well, I can tell, like if one builder's at 40,000, one's at 20, that jumps out of the page. But it's a lot harder when you get into cabinets and painting and lumber and windows and all these other, now there's 100 other line items that a client is just not trained to look for. But you and I would know that they're totally different homes. And now you've lost the ability to have the relationship with the client, which frankly, for me, that's my number one priority. I want to have a relationship with the client. Do you would you echo that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We are with these clients for over a year. And so it's not just, it's a little bit selfish too, because we want to have fun during this process, as well as having this homeowner have a good time and feel like they can trust us. It's a long journey. So if we're not having fun and enjoying the process, what are we doing this for?
That's so true. It is a contractual relationship, right? That's what we entered into, but it's really personal as well. And, we need to trust the client. They need to trust us. It's not just the legal contract on paper because, as well as I do that during the build process, there's sometimes just a lot of give and take. Like that was a misunderstanding, but we're going to work through this together. And It's not always, we're going to charge you through the nose. That's not what it's about. We want them to have the best house they can get. It's their home.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And as a builder, you think of like your ideal client. And I think we've gotten a lot better as to who our ideal client is and really understand on that front end if someone doesn't seem to be a good fit. Early on when you're with your company, you're like, I just want to build any home I can get. And now we're at a point where it's like, again, both for our sake and the customers, I want to make sure like we are the perfect fit. 'Cause there's a lot of great builders out there. And that's what homeowners have to really think through is like, interview your builder. It's like, just because they're a great builder who won all these awards and you love their style does not mean they might be a good fit for you. It really is about the team, the personalities. They've got to dive in because like when we just got done with this awesome build. Probably the best clients to build for ever. Every single thing, no build goes perfect. Every issue that came up, they were so understanding, so trusting, knew that we explored every option before presenting anything to them and trusted in that. And they had such a great build process, but so did we, because it feels good to be trusted and for them to understand we are here to take care of them.
This episode is brought to you by Pella Northland. For 19 and a half years, I've been building homes, and 95% of all of my homes have used Pella windows. I couldn't be happier to call them a partner in our builds and our remodels. Whether you're an architect, a designer, or a remodeler, I'd highly recommend Pella windows. They can fit old homes, new homes, reclaimed, commercial, and really everything in between. Pella is a company that we trust and that we recommend to our clients. Additionally, in management, Peter and Ed have just been absolute fantastic people to work with, as well as mentors to me personally. So when it comes time to look for a window, I'd highly recommend Pella windows. Find more at pellanorthland.com. Also, if you're interested, you can hear episode 1 where I interview Peter and Ed together for a great listen on business and Pella windows. This episode is brought to you by Adaptive. Adaptive is an AI technology that we use for all our cash flow management. If you're in construction, you know how difficult this is. The days of importing all your invoices, cost coding them, asking 10 people in your office where they get coded, is this job approved, is this invoice approved, making notes, all of that is now done through AI. Your invoices get automatically uploaded. After that, all you have to do is cross-check its accuracy per the jobs. This is now saving us hours per job per month, because with a click of a button, you can now have the draw process automated, which has been a complete game changer. On top of that, it's going to track your lien waivers as well as your certificates of insurance, making sure that everyone is in compliance before their bills are paid. This is saving us hours and hours per job per month, all with a click of a button. If you want to know more, check out adaptive.build. Additionally, we interviewed Matt Covano on episode 15 of the Curious Builder Podcast. You can find out more about it on our website as well at thecuriousbuilderpodcast.com.
They get that extra, I mean, it's not like you deliberately in your mind saying, oh, I'm going to treat this person better or worse or anything like that. But, you know, your best clients, I mean, there's a reason why you have a clique of best friends. Like, why do you spend the same time with, you know, family and friends and people that you enjoy being around? They feed your emotional bucket. It's not hard to be nice to people that you care about. And your clients, it's a very unique, intimate relationship. And I agree with you. You know, some of your best clients, you know, you're sending pictures to them of your kids. You're interested in what they're doing. And, you know, even well after, I mean, I have a couple now that we built 11 years ago, and they still are very interested in, like, you know, hey, now their daughter is married and their son is starting a business. And I wasn't even married or had kids at that time. Yeah. And so, but like, they're still very interested in like where you are in your life. And they realize that, you know, maybe professionally you're at a different place. I often hear jokes like, oh, we couldn't afford to build with you now. But it's like, you know, 13 years ago, man, every home is going to be a lot different than 13 years ago, right? Yeah. But it speaks to how unique the relationship is between a builder and a client.
Yeah. And I remember our very first home for Style and Structure that we ever built was for my sister. And we had so much fun building this house. And again, not that it didn't have issues that we ran into. And it actually was, we were just dealing with making sure we had all the right trades for the job, because it's going to be different on each job. You don't always use the same trade partners depending on the home and the style that you're building. So we had some complications, but gosh, it was fun.
What year was that you guys started?
Was it 2018 that we built her home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I think that's right.
And it was just a great time. But after we were done with that, I reflected on it and was like, gosh, how can we make every project like that? And really it boiled down to the relationship. Because she was my sister, I was very open and honest about the design process. You know, like when you go shopping with your mom or your sister or someone, you're asking their opinion. What do you think of this? And I could bluntly tell her, oh gosh, no, don't you dare do that. Or, my gosh, this looks amazing. So we had so much fun collaborating. And I thought, could I do that with every one of my clients? And if we had the right Style and Structure client and I felt comfortable and they trusted me, I want to be open and honest with them and really help them. I've been in this industry for a long time, and some of these people, it might be their first build, but at least certainly their first build with us. I want to help guide them and give them my true opinion and not just say, oh, yeah, that looks good, because I'm nervous they like it and I don't.
Yeah, and I think that's really how I've always tried to, you know, run my job sites. Even before Style and Structure, I worked for a company, and there were a lot more negative sometimes on the buyer because, you know, it's more of a one-way street. And it always rubbed me the wrong way, because I got to be true friends with some of these people. And some of these people now are reaching out to us. I mean, we've had a client that the one up in Coon Rapids we built for many years ago, but it's easy through social media, you know, even if you're not close personal friends. But like you said, I'm following what their kids are doing, and it's a fun thing. Just the relationships you have is so important, and the honesty and transparency. I'm there every day, right?
Well, and I think I always tell people, you're not hiring a yes man. Like, if that's the case, then don't hire me. I mean, I will tell you what I think. And I think what you're speaking to, Danielle, with your sister, is that it's honesty, right? Because it's integrity. It's the fact that you will tell them, you're guiding them. They've never built a home before. And whether they're choosing you, and obviously we explain this to them as well, but you want an honest opinion. Now, obviously we have to maybe hedge some of our opinions on certain things. And I kind of tell my clients, hey, I'll push back 2 or 3 times, and, you know, in a respectful way. But like, if you want a polka dot purple house, I will build you a polka dot purple house.
Yeah.
I'll do it. I haven't yet to have anyone do that. But I use that as a drastic example because, you want people on your team to feel comfortable enough to disagree with one another in a respectful way. And I also believe a little bit in, kind of like fighting for your design idea. And because we have a close relationship with the designers we work with and architects too, I want to make sure I'm aligning ourselves with a team that is going to discuss a topic. And, sometimes I'll be in a cabinet meeting and I'll have a certain point of view on something and the designer will feel something different. I'm like, well, I feel strongly about this. And maybe the designer's like, you know what, on this one, I'm not really that strong. If you feel that strongly about it, let's do it. Or sometimes you both will be like, I actually think this is best. I think it's okay for the client to see you because I would want, if I was working with the two of you and you both were discussing in a way that I could see was respectful, you're fighting for my home to be better. And I would appreciate that.
Right. And there's so many different paths to accomplish this build. And so that's what we do. We discuss, we talk to peers in the industry, we talk to our trade partners and trying to figure out the best solution for that home because it's not going to be the same across the board.
The funny little story about that, I had a customer years ago and we're getting right down to closing. I could tell something was bugging her. And I said, what is it? And she said, well, I don't want to be a complainer. And I said, you're not a complainer, just what is it? And it was this beautiful railing we had put together, and there was a knot that just bugged her. And I said, and I did. I thought, this really gives this character. And she goes, but I don't like it. And I know it's not wrong, and we went back and forth a few times, and I just had it replaced. Didn't tell her I was going to do it. And we got to closing, and it was all done. And I said, I did this for you, but I'm going to keep this piece because I think it's beautiful.
Right.
And we're still friends. And it's years and years later, we ran into her at the kids' school and she goes, do you still have my railing? And I said, yes, because it's beautiful.
That's so funny.
And it was a little thing, but it was big to her. Right.
I mean, do you guys see that? We had a not as funny of a story, but it happens now more and more. Everyone loves rift and corded white oak or white oak. And yeah, I can see you nodding. You know where I'm going with this. And, you see a magazine and it's a magazine for one thing. It's not in person. You can't, maybe it's been photo doctored. I mean, I've had photos doctored because I didn't like a power line in them. I mean, you could do a lot of editing in photography, right? And, anyway, every piece of wood was made by God on it in a tree, and each tree is different than the tree even next to it. I mean, we've seen some crazy stuff where people want to know, where did we source our white oak? What part of the country? Was it harvested from the same glade of wood? Like, could we prove that? I know you're laughing. I'm not sure I'm ready to laugh yet. I'm still scarred. And the point of it is like, this is wild grains, to your point, beautiful. Most people love, like I love a rift and corded board where it has that natural movement, or you have that like almost like a fan of the wood movement. I think it's gorgeous. Okay. And sometimes I'll have a client that just wants complete uniformity, like not a single variance. Then you shouldn't really do wood, number one. True. Because, that's just not going to be that way. And so, anyway, I don't know how we went down that wormhole. Oh, the railing. Yeah. So, yeah.
We had a similar experience with the white oak because I love it. I have a very specific stain. We call it the custom style and structure stain that I love to use. And we had a homeowner who kind of wanted that look, but chose a darker stain. And so that was funny because it takes so differently too.
Oh, man. And each board, right?
Yeah.
Every board takes it differently.
And you had swore these were two different styles of wood at that point because it was so different than the sample they saw with the lighter color.
Oh, when we got to their kitchen, they hated it. I hated it. I was like, Joe, what happened in here? And it was how, like, the stain they picked took with this white oak. And we were asking our cabinet company, like, this can't be right. I mean, it looked like zebra stripes. It was really weird. I was like... Yep.
And to me, I was like, well, this is what they ordered.
Right.
Yeah, we had to redo that. I mean, that's our big thing is, again, you plan and plan and plan.
Well.
And you try and make sure it's exactly what the homeowner wants. But again, we're working with natural products, all these different trades. Things happen. And that's what we always try to remind homeowners because they feel like, gosh, there's going to be a mistake. And my builder is going to say, well, that's what you ordered. And they feel like they're stuck with it. And then they're going to stare at it and hate it. And that's an approach Joe and I have taken since the beginning is like, if it bugs you that much, we're going to figure out a way. I mean, it's not always going to be free, but we're going to fix this because it's an eyesore. And it's funny because every model home that we've ever had, I'll go through a house and I'll be like, Joe, that didn't turn out the way I wanted. Something. It could be the smallest little thing. And I'll say, oh, but it's fine. And then we'll keep walking around the house. And a week later when I come back, it's changed out. And he goes, I knew that was going to bug you. I'm like, Joe, I said it was fine.
That's a good partner right there.
Right. He goes, you say that, but I know you too well. And it's not fine. And you're going to talk about it all the time.
Yep.
I mean, it is funny. I mean, to me, though, it does become personalities. I think of my house now. So I'm in a 1919 house that we've remodeled, but there's some dings in the floor and some, whatevers. And it's like, if this is a new home, would I change it? Would I not? But after a while, it becomes kind of the character of the home. It sort of defines, what it is. And so I guess you sort of embrace the imperfect nature. And I get it too. I mean, I do try to have an understanding and empathy towards the client. Like, they've spent a lot of money and they want it a certain way. And so, again, if they're reasonable, we'll try to figure out a way, of course, to make it work. And so, and really our clients are amazing at, also understanding that perspective as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had mostly good experiences with that. We've had some clients who aren't as understanding.
Yep, I've been there. Yeah.
We had a interesting client one time where he wasn't the easiest to work with. And again, this is prior to us feeling like we really defined who our true homeowners are. This guy, I mean, there was probably a handful of trades that he up and took the liberty to fire on our site.
That is
Oh, yeah.
Like,
it was very...
to our electrician, and for some reason felt like it was not up to his standards. And we got a call from our electrician saying, this homeowner just fired me, like yelled at me as I walked out the door. And he goes, I'm not going back. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah, it was tough.
He was, not the easiest to work with. What was really funny is my husband and I were purchasing the lot across the street from him because it was in this beautiful neighborhood. We ended up not going.
Yeah.
We're like, I can't. And one of the challenging scenarios was we're in this house. He did not want to upgrade lighting or even put any money towards it. So he bought the $25 boob lights around his hallway. I'm like, are you sure you want this? I mean, he was insistent. I don't want to put any money towards my lights. It's not that big a deal. I'm like, at least a good LED disc, no. So anyways, they get installed. He hates them, of course, and wants to switch them out. We're like, no problem. You can switch them out. But at this point, lighting, once installed, can't be returned. Not to mention, I mean, these were pretty darn cheap.
Yeah, they're cheap.
Well, plus trip charges. I mean, the trip charges alone would be...
Right.
Yeah.
So the lights are not refunded, but we can buy new ones, get it installed. We won't even charge a new install fee, kind of a thing. I mean, he was livid that I wouldn't refund him.
Not just livid. I was afraid he was going to get physical with Danielle.
Well, he's got the electric deal too, right? Because he was the one who fired the electrician.
Yeah.
So he's got definitely something's going on with Sparkies.
Yeah. I mean, he was purple in the face, yelling at me. Joe had to come and step in between. I mean, all over lights. I'm like, so
I'm very protective of her, by the way. And to see that was took every ounce to what the heck? Did we get to diffuse this now?
Right.
But again, it's those moments are lessons learned. There was some red flags early on. And again, it was one of those scenarios that we just wanted. We wanted to build. It was more about the job. And now we really want to make sure we have the right clients. So,
identify. Yeah. So, we've kind of gone down a different path here, but I like where we're going. What are some of the things that you use to identify who your ideal client is, both from a marketing standpoint as well as interview standpoint, and when you get going, and maybe even speak a little bit, what are some red flags and what are some ways that you try to weed out ones that aren't a good fit?
I'd say a number one red flag is when they take your contract and they said, my lawyer wants us to change your contract. That's number one.
That's always tough. But at the same time, it's probably because they've had a bad experience. They're trying to protect themselves. So we haven't always walked away from that.
We have not. And some turned out really well.
I would say what we've tried to do with our marketing, because what we've done, if anyone has seen Style and Structure on Instagram and stuff, most people feel like if they haven't met us, they know who we are.
They know you, yeah.
And we've really been intentional about that with social media or our website. We want people to understand who we are as a team, how we communicate. We're extremely transparent on our website about our process and projects and highs and lows, because before they ever meet us, we want them to feel like, gosh, these guys might be a right fit for us. Because again, it's It's not us choosing them too. It's them choosing us. So we want to put everything out there and understand. And then we take the time to really discuss and interview. Like before we ever sign with a client, we have a pretty long, detailed process. And it's one, getting to know each other, understanding styles, and explaining in more depth what our process is. So we can all really feel good about moving forward to these next steps.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree with you. One of the advantages of social media, especially depending on how you market yourself, right? There are some companies that showcase only their home and that's what they want it to be about. And I respect that. I would probably align myself more with somebody like yourself where, I want the personality. I want the people to shine, whether it's the subcontractors, the craftsmen, and you can talk about all of it, but also realizing that, you can have some fun while doing this. We had Stephen Yegge on, actually my lawyer, and he was a fascinating interview. He was really funny. And he said, he goes, I take my work seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. And I like that because you can be very professional in what you do, but you can have a good time doing it. And I think and frankly, it's important because if you're going to do something for a year, year and a half, 2 years, you do need to enjoy the team that you're with. And I do think where social media can really shine is kind of open up the door and show people what it's like, to interview your team, to see who they are.
Yeah. It's funny. Joe and I both worked for a previous builder together, and that's how we had met. He was the builder. I was the salesperson working out of the model home. And this company had these personality tests, and they categorized it in 4 different ways. It was like, everyone has different ones.
Like the disc assessment, like the red, yellow, blue, green.
Yeah. This one was bull, tigers, lambs, and owls. And so you take this personality test and figure out what you are. And the whole idea is, one, you typically attract your similar personality type. And so like from a sales perspective, you're probably, I was a bull tiger. And why are you nodding, Mark?
Because you and I are exactly the same.
So they say, okay, most of your clients are going to be these bull tigers. And I looked at that and I'm like, you know what? Currently, you are accurate. But my goal was to figure out how can I relate to the other personality types. And Joe and I joke all the time. It's like lately we have we've had people come on board and be the owl personalities. And I'm like, what is it about that? Because, again, I've taken the time to really understand what is an owl personality. They need the details. They need all their questions answered before they're willing to move forward with someone. So I've taken that approach in sales while still being my bull tiger self. I'm still giving them what they need. So it's been really funny, the personality types that come through the door, because it's not always like just like you, but you can figure out how to work with them to still have a good time.
I think you're right, because for a long time, if you have someone like yourself, it's really, like I would say, salesmen are easy to sell to. We love to be sold. Show us something shiny and flashy and really colorful and pretty. I'm like, ooh, I like it. And I remember when, what a trial close question is, for those listening that don't know sales, but like essentially it was like, hey, if everything works out okay and we meet your price point, is there any reason why we couldn't have a contract written by the end of the week? That's a trial close question, because obviously they're gonna have to say yes. If they say yes, you get them saying yes, right? Yeah. I did this early on in my career. I don't really do that like that anymore. And I was maybe 26, 27 when I did this. And the guy goes, that's a trial close question. And I got like deer in the headlight, like, oh no, I've been found out. And he goes, and I love it. And he was a car salesman for a dealership, and he loved it. He didn't actually buy. He goes, I actually already bought a house, but he goes, I love what you're doing.
That's awesome.
And the point was, salespeople love to be sold to. For a long time, and it's not that I can really slow my speech pattern down all that much or my enthusiasm, but I think by partnering with people on your team, whether it's your senior project manager or Joe, or however your sales team is approaching your clients, having people on your team that complement each other energy-wise and, whether personality-wise, because every client is not obviously the same. And for a long time, I felt like engineers in particular have their stereotypes too. And so, they're very detailed focused. They ask a ton of questions. They have to feel comfortable in the knowledge. They're not going to be kind of swept away with emotion and passion of all these really cool design elements, right? They're going to focus on the structure of style and structure. Yes. And so I think understanding that it could be your designer, it could be your architect. It doesn't always have to be even within your own team. And I think then making that person feel comfortable, but that's really the point of contact. And for my company, it's me for sales. Essentially, I need to identify them pretty quick on my read on them. And then, maybe I'll bring someone that has some of those similar traits. I assume when you're interviewing people and seeing like they're a good prospect, are you bringing different people into the room that are going to kind of fill that out for you too, Danielle?
Yes and no. I mean, what we actually do is we do a personality test for every one of our clients.
Really? At what point? Like you meet them and then the next meeting?
They've signed. Yeah, we have them.
So after they've signed?
After they've signed, we fill out a lot of paperwork. We have them take a personality test. We have them fill out this form of like what's their favorite coffee and wine, because we do all these fun things throughout their build and little gifts. Taking notes, Mark.
I am taking notes. That's a great idea. Now, after they sign for the build or after they sign your pre-construction agreement contract?
Pre-construction agreement.
Okay, so it's part of your pre-construction.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we want the whole process to be fun with them. And then we take the time to do a download with our whole team and explain, here's the personality type you're about to meet. So they can really, cater to that. So again, our designer, if she's talking to the engineer type, how can she really dive in? Because our designer is so knowledgeable and not just, the pretty of all the selections. She knows all the quality details. She knows how it should be installed. It's what makes her a great designer, because I'm like, she knows the construction side of it. So when she's suggesting, whether it's tile or faucets, because people always ask with faucets, why are we going to get a expensive Brizzo faucet and not, I can just go to Home Depot and get it. She knows all the plastic versus metal components in between to say, here's why it's costing what it is. And that makes a great designer, because it's not just, this is pretty, let's put in your house. So she can really speak to that personality type.
How, out of curiosity, how involved is that person? Is it a pretty high level one? Is it pretty in depth? I mean, these personality tests go anywhere from 5 minutes, 10 minutes to an hour long. How much information are you having them take during that time?
1-page test.
It's a 1-page test.
Yeah.
And husband and wife separately?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to speak to them differently.
I knew an architect that would interview the clients together and separate before he would sign with them. He would interview you, and then he'd interview you, and then he would interview you, both of you together. And it was his way of like, in case maybe one of the spouses didn't really feel, I mean, obviously they're married, so you'd think they'd be comfortable talking to each other, but maybe there's just something that they really wanted to be heard.
It's amazing how many people are not.
Yeah.
So we had a client already too where, the husband, he's coming with all these issues, and you could tell that it really was never coming from him. And the wife was there every day and loving everything, but then later, she really didn't love it, right? So she's going home, and to break through that relationship, like, no, it's okay if you don't like. You can talk to me about it,
right? I mean, one thing that I actually mentioned earlier on, and you both are extremely approachable, and so I think that's obviously been a huge boon to you and your building career. Because I mean, Joe, if you're the structure, you're also you have kind of these bright, twinkly eyes. Like, I mean, the first time, it's funny, and I say this because I couldn't think of another way to say it. Like, I'm not necessarily envious of other companies, because I just respect other companies, and it's just not really in my DNA to say like, oh, I wish I was them. But I will say this about style and structure. I've always, from the first time that I ever saw your guys' reels and everything, and I saw your energy, I've always just kind of like, there's a part of me that's like, I just kind of want to be on their team, because I just really love the energy that you have. And Joe, you just have this way of connecting with people, and I don't know how else to say it other than kind of like sparkly eyes. And like, have you heard this from your clients, Danielle?
Oh my gosh, yes. And the big thing is like, the field guys aren't always like great in front of customers. Like, we have a lot of guys who are great on the job site. They're great at what they do, but they don't want to deal with the customer service side. So when I first started working with Joe, I'm like, oh my gosh, I found a unicorn, a guy who's knowledgeable in the field.
And he's quite stylish. I mean, for the structure, he's quite stylish. Good job picking out his stuff.
I helped pick out.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
With his wife.
Yeah.
She shop for him.
See, double whammy.
Yeah, right.
You're getting it both at work and at home, Joe. You have no choice. Speaking of which, you guys have a partnership. You guys worked at a previous builder.
Yeah.
You guys decided to start your own thing. Your first client was your sister. As you guys went on, what I'd love to hear is, we've had other husband and wives that have been on before as teammates. I've had other families, like a son and a dad, on before. I've never had partners on that weren't, either married or family. Talk to us a little bit about partnerships. I mean, a lot of people have partnership relationships in their building. I'm curious a little bit about conflict resolution, and just what are some secrets to how you guys work together well? Because partnerships, I know, are not always easy. Right. Sometimes when you're the sole proprietor, I mean, for better or for worse, the buck stops with you. But you can also kind of, what you say kind of goes. and while you should obviously listen to your team, I mean, I get that, but at the leadership, you guys are at the top. How do you guys conflict resolute together?
Well, to start off, I mean, I've been in the business a long time. I've always wanted to own my own business, but with a partner, because I just, I love the idea of being able to bounce ideas off of somebody. And I've had the opportunity a few times, but the partner wasn't quite right. Now that I did this, so many people ask, why'd you wait so long? And I blame it on Danielle because I had to wait for her to grow up.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. When I met Danielle, I felt right away like she's somebody that I can trust. I can look her in the eye and she's, the perfect business partner, because we can be completely open and honest with each other. And for the most part, we get along really well. But if there is a conflict,
So is conflict. Come on. That's it.
and should I tell the story about the last time it was bugging me?
Sure. I'm trying to wonder what it is.
Yeah. Which one is it?
Mark's like,
Yes, this is perfect.
So we have this, we like to get out of the office if we're, need to get something off our chest. And we took a walk across the street, and we're gonna have it out. And it did not go well. And I came back and I said, okay, this is what bugged me. Danielle, we are never gonna argue again when you're wearing sunglasses.
Because you couldn't see your eyes.
I could not see your eyes. I said, I need to look you in the eye.
Yes?
I've never heard that before.
That's so funny.
Joe,
I need to see your soul, Danielle.
Yeah. Well, there is something about the way we emote, right? I mean, so much of communication is nonverbal. I mean, even like this podcast, like I wanted as many interviews as possible to be in person. I feel like of course, we're people, right? And plus, I feel like I've spent too much time on Zoom over the last couple of years, and we're not even really in that dominant of a Zoom industry compared to some. There's something about reading people's body language that's going to tell you much clearer where you're at. So I understand why you want the sunglasses off.
And honestly, and as our relationship evolved, it is almost like, I have to trust her 100% without even a hint of, because there's so many things financially and everything, it's 100% both ways. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very rare in a partnership.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think, when we met, it was very obvious that we both were passionate about very opposite ends of the industry. So a lot of times when people partner together, it might be two builders who have been in the industry, but they're both doing very similar things. So it was nice to have two opposite ends. So although we very much each have a pulse on what each other does, me more on the front end, sales, design, marketing side, and Joe with the build, I don't have to worry about his side of the business. He doesn't have to worry about mine. And that's not to say, there aren't struggles going on sometimes with our build and he's stressing out. We bounce ideas off each other, but I ultimately know that he has it handled. And it does boil down to having that trust and also level of communication. Like there's nothing I wouldn't say to him, and incredibly bluntly too. Because it's like, if you feel like you have to hold back with someone, it's like there's always
it's a guarded relationship.
Yeah, something not said. So,
and it takes energy too. I mean, we were just talking about this actually today. My project manager and I are very, very similar. And I think one of the reasons why we enjoy each other is that it doesn't take much energy. In fact, we get energy from each other. It's easy to communicate. And we had a facilitator come in and help work with our team on our personality traits. And the one of the questions is how different are you at home from where you're at work? And for me, I was the same. And but for some on the team they felt like they had to put on a different personality, that wears on them. And so like then my job as an owner is like, how can I create either their role or the office in a way that they feel comfortable so that they feel like they can be themselves. And the reason it's important in a relationship is if you are trying to be something that you're not, or if you are constantly trying to readjust your altitude for the other airplane, it takes effort. And, it's a little bit like at the end of the day, you've used up a lot of your energy and then all of a sudden you get a little short with, whoever you're near if it's taking too much energy.
Yeah.
So.
And when it naturally comes together, I think like ours did.
Yeah.
I'm very much a pleaser, but I also like to be challenged. Danielle, she'll come up with a lot of these crazy ideas on stuff, but she doesn't give me the opportunity to say no.
Yeah.
But
by the way, I've already made this decision,
it's
Joe.
great.
Okay, great.
I don't care. I don't care how you do it. I just want it to look like this.
Right.
And I love that challenge because I never wanted to be in a business where, the old school, we've always done it that way. It can't be done. It's not possible. That's not even on my radar.
Well, that's why we worked so well at our previous company together, is because I still had all these crazy ideas and everyone was telling me no constantly. And then I'd talk to Joe. I'm like, you can make this happen. And it would be like the feature on the home that everybody talked about when they were touring the model. I'm like, once it was done, a lot of people who said no before took a lot of pride in it. Like, oh, look at this cool grocery door pass-through that we did. I'm like, yes, the one that couldn't be done.
Yeah, the one that you said no to, but I did anyway.
And I think a lot of builders are like that. And they really good builders, it really works for them. They're successful. But when you can drive up to a house and say, I know who built this house, we just never wanted to be that.
Yeah.
And I think we've taken that and we've had that as a culture in our company, which has been huge. Nobody in our company is allowed to say no to us, to a homeowner. What we can say is you either say yes completely, we'll get this done, or here's why we can't do it, and get a solution. Because a lot of ideas come from beautiful homes in California or somewhere off in Europe. And unfortunately in Minnesota, we have a different climate. So not that we can't get close to it, but it has to be done differently. And here's why. So for example, like windows, I love that seamless look on the corner with windows.
Yep, the window glazing to glazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not
Good luck when it's negative 30.
Yeah, you can't do that
Exactly.
in Minnesota, but we work.
I
with our
totally
business
understand what you're saying.
partners and get great ideas that get close and get ultimately. the
It's not a no client. It's just not here. We're opening up a branch in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we'd be happy to do it there. Yeah. I like that. They're not allowed to say no. Do you guys have like a no jar instead of a swear jar? If you heard someone say no, you got to put $1 in it?
Good idea.
We don't have a no jar because really it's like, people have just gotten used to it because I push back hard if someone even attempts it. We do have a jar, $1 jar, and it was for being late to meetings. So people have to pay $1 every minute they're late to meetings.
Ooh.
And we no longer have people late. And even if they're going to be late for something like, we understand if it's a client meeting, we don't ask them to end that early. But they will make sure to let us know and notify us so we don't deal with that issue anymore.
That's pretty genius. So we had Danielle Felt from Cura Home Maintenance. Do you guys use Cura Home at all for like air duct cleaning and stuff like that?
No.
You should listen to his podcast. He was really a sharp dude. A couple of takeaways. I think he reads a book a week. So he reads 52 books a year. He's very into like continuing learning. But one of the things that he does with his staff, so like let's say you're going to show up at 8 a.m. and your tech is late or they have to recancel. So let's just say that appointment cost $1,000 and you had to reschedule it to Friday. So you lost $1,000 plus you had to rebook it plus you lost that client. So it really cost you like $3,000 or $4,000 for the rebooking, right?
Yeah.
And so what he came up with was on time every time, where I can't remember that he tells us on the podcast, I can't remember, but it was like, let's just say it was $100 or let's call it $50. Every time you're on time, you get $50. If you do it for a week, you get a week bonus. And it accumulates through the whole year per week, right? Because it costs him way more money if he has to reschedule than if he just pays you a $10, $50, whatever the number is, right? But here's what's cool. Let's say his company is 15, 20 people. If everyone in the company is on time the same day, you get a company-wide bonus for everyone. So what happens is people start holding each other accountable. So kind of like your $1 jar for being late, right? You don't want to be late in front of your peers and you want to respect their time. So that's what made me think of it.
It really is motivational. And sometimes you feel like, gosh, it sounds childish, $1 jar. But it did solve an issue where, there was a couple people who were on time, if not early, to every one of our meetings. And they were feeling really disrespected, like, you don't value my time and your time's more important than mine. And it was our designer who brought that up. And she just started getting angry about it. I'm like, okay, this needs to be addressed. And again, it was, for some people, it's just a few minutes, or they're strolling in, or they're grabbing a coffee. And like, this is just something we really need to change about our culture, because for us, I think that's been important from day one as we're hiring people in our office. What you see is what you get on social media. No, we're not doing a music video every day in our office.
Oh, darn.
Singing a Disney song as we're going.
If I come there, I'm coming with a boombox on my shoulder. I'm singing Aladdin.
Bring it on. We would love that. But it's fun. And it really does feel like we value a work-life balance, and we value having fun when you come to work, because you're at work a lot of
your life.
Yeah, you're there all the time. So if you're not going to enjoy it, like, again, what are you doing?
I was reading a book recently, and someone in the book was mentioning that not having meetings on the hour starting on an hour or ending on an hour, especially with like the Zoom stuff, right? So it's like you start a meeting at 1:05 and you end it at 1:55. And, our calendars don't set it up that easily when you're doing an auto thing. It always goes to the top of the hour, but it gives you like that 10-minute breather room, and it also allows it, and then keep your meeting, like end your meeting when it's supposed to end. So you're talking about the beginning side of it. Sometimes, especially the Minnesota nice thing, some of our meetings can last a long time because you end up just continuing to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk.
Yeah.
And we actually time most of our meetings.
Do you really?
Yeah. Like if we're going to end it in an hour, and then we rate our meetings as well. Everybody.
Are you talking about internally or with clients?
Well, internally mainly, but also with clients. If they're, an hour, we try to really stay within that. And it makes a big difference because when you get off on these tangents, bring it back. Hey, we've got, 15 minutes left to wrap up. But internally, we also rate the meeting then.
Really? So tell me why and what you do with it.
Well, we actually use a program called Traction. Have you heard of that?
I have. It was actually one of my questions to ask you about because I've heard you loosely reference it several times.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we love it, and that really helps keep us organized. So again, as a company that's having so much fun, if you don't have something to keep you on track, I mean, we could all
A
hang
system,
out
yeah.
and drink coffee all day together and chat and never get any work done. So I think it's really helped us be organized in our meetings, but also our to-dos and just staying on track.
And the beauty of it is, the meetings are very structured as well on what we do with our time. And, everybody likes to BS at the beginning of a meeting. So we actually give 5 minutes for that. And everybody in the meeting has to say, what's a personal and professional good thing that happened in the last week?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really great. You get around, that 5 minutes is up. Everybody you get to know each other a little bit better.
Yep.
It's awesome.
Interesting. I like that. I mean, we have a networking group that I'm in, and we do the same thing, the Rosebud Thorn. And we do it at the dinner table, frankly, with the kids. So it's, but obviously you're going to have to, if you have depending on how big your team is, and if it's 5 minutes, you're going to have to go pretty fast for that.
Yep.
So,
Oh, yeah. You go
Yeah.
quick, and someone gets off on a tangent about something that happened over the weekend, and we're like, there's a tangent button,
oh, yeah.
and beeps at them. We're like, okay, sorry, we got to keep going. We're on a timer.
It's like Taboo, like the game.
Kind of, yeah.
Taboo buzzer.
But my goodness, there's so much to get done in a day. And even with clients, you talk about, do we keep them on schedule? It's like, to an extent, yes. One, we have to respect the meetings that follow after that. But two, it's like, even if they think they want to go off on these tangents and discuss, if they've been in a 2-hour meeting with us, they leave being like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted. So, we understand you only have so much attention span and only so much that you really should be getting done with a client each day, and then keeping it moving.
How big is your team?
We've got 10 people
Okay.
on staff.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And that's a good fit for you. How many homes are you guys building and remodels, or how many projects a year?
I think the size of our team is perfect. It really is covering not only what we're currently doing, but our growth projections. So we have a mix, again, of remodels and builds. Currently, we have about 8 new construction homes under contract. Some have started build and some are getting close to that. And then for the remodels, we have quite a bit. I would say we have probably 20 to 25 that
Oh my,
are
that's a lot.
through.
Yeah.
But again, we do remodels of any size.
So you have no price limit on the bottom end?
We don't.
Oh wow. So you'll do like a $20,000 bathroom?
We will. Yeah.
Wow.
And we do this because a lot of our $20,000 bathrooms, we have a lot of relationships with
They
like real
expand.
estate agents.
Sure.
And a realtor's like, hey, my client needs to get this few projects done to get it listed. And so we'll help them get it listed, but they're also, if they have a great experience, future customers.
I mean, I've struggled with that. I mean, I don't have the official rule because someone will come off the website, and maybe our pre-questions, they either skirted around some of the rules or something like that. And, we have some intake forms as they're trying to get a hold of us, tell us about their project. But I usually do like a 15-minute call. And I have found, and we're a smaller company, we're half the size. And I have found that any project really under a couple $100,000 for a remodel, it takes as much time as it takes me to do a $1 million remodel.
Yeah.
Honestly, between the design and the questions and the time and the profitability. And if I'm really going to make it profitable or really if I have to take my project manager away from a $1 million remodel, I have to charge his same rate for this client. And now all of a sudden I'm not very economical. And I usually tell the client that I don't think we're the right fit for you, going back to attracting your right clients. I have not been able to, earlier I would take, obviously anything and everything and figure it out. And it's only after time you realize like, wow, that little bathroom or, whatever, man, that thing took 6 months, of what, that's just a lot of time. And maybe I missed out on some of these other things because of it. How have you been able to navigate that better?
I think we've struggled with that. And there's certainly been complaints even on our team, like, do we really want to take on these projects? It's taking so many of our resources.
And you're like, sorry guys, we can't say no. We can't say no, so it's got to be a yes.
I think what we've decided to do is put a bit more boundaries around that. So, again, we're very clear about our process. We've reeled in our allotted time that homeowners are allowed, so if it is a smaller project, they won't get as much design time included. They can always pay for more, but that's the whole point is like, every client's different. Some takes more time than others, and the ones that do take more, we want to make sure our team's getting paid for it. So we've adjusted our process to hopefully be, quicker and efficient on those smaller projects. But then if it is going over, the homeowner's very aware, like if they want to, we don't want to take that option away from them, but it's true cost for us. So we want to make sure it's getting paid for.
Is your, oh man, I lost my train of thought there. I was like, I'm not going to interrupt you. I will remember my question. I did interrupt you, but I definitely forgot my question. Well, shoot.
So we're talking about the size of our team, and feeling that's right now. But we really project like where we're going, because the last thing we want to do is, get desperation hire.
Yeah.
When Danielle and I first started, we needed people and we needed them fast. And I know some guys that are very experienced, and sometimes experience isn't the only thing you need. It has to be a culture fit. And then we kind of flipped over and it's like, well, this guy's a culture fit and we can just teach him. Well, that didn't work very well either. So to find that right mix it's an art form.
It is. We actually just, our office manager's last day, recording this is tomorrow. And so we have been interviewing, I think we had 16 applicants. We narrowed it down to 4. And, it ended up being, it was not even the one person that we're going to extend the offer to is just perfect. It seems like the right fit, the right personality, the right energy. And there was 2 others that were like very good, but I can't tell you what it is. And I guess the proof will be, I mean, if a year from now, if Joel is still here, this podcast will not air before I tell him that it's his job. So, so anyway, he was the right fit. So
I get a feeling it's like it's a combo of that experience, but also, is it that culture fit? And sometimes people are really good interviewers, and then all of a sudden you hire them and you realize.
So that's funny you say that. So for years, I mean, I think we've only had one person ever leave our company, meaning some have left, some retired, one lady who was amazing moved back to Sweden. But in general, like as you would normally say, have quit. I've only ever fired one person, and only one person has really quit, if you will. And so I don't have a lot of experience with hiring and firing because it's worked out pretty well. And I've always just basically hired people that I like, which is actually a terrible way to hire people, it turns out. And so the last couple ones I've felt like, man, I think I'm such an optimist. It's probably what makes me a good remodeler, is like, oh, they're going to be great. They can, no problem. They'll be great, right? And so this time I had someone do all the first interviews. So before I ever met anyone. So then I only got the ones that kind of made it past. And then I had someone else sit in with me as well on the interviews, so that, you could kind of say, well, what do you think? And and it's like, and if we both unanimously chose the same person, you're like, okay, now I feel much better about this hire than maybe ones in the past, just giving it more thought.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
But I think putting heavy weight to that culture fit is huge. Because again, I mean, no different than what we're talking about with customers that you're building with. It's like you're around these employees all the time. And Joe and I really pride ourselves in hiring different personality types, because I don't want someone who's exactly like me, because those are some of the talents I bring to the table. So I feel like we have a really well-rounded team where everyone's really bringing a lot to the table. So you've got to be able to pull your weight, but you have to also be able to like enjoy yourself and have fun. And we don't have a lot of it's not like we hire all extroverts. I mean, we frankly have a lot of introverts on our team, but we still all enjoy each other. And we go to these fun award shows for the Parade of Homes together. This year we're taking a big party limo down. I'm like, we want to hang out. So I'm like, I just think that's so much fun.
And I'll let you in on a little secret. all these reels and music videos we do, really not my personality.
Yeah. Oh no. I saw your latest one. I saw the Friends one that you guys just aired, which is we did one like that last year, but we did it with snowballs and a few other things. You guys went full couch and umbrellas and the whole you went method acting on that one. Well done.
Yes, our marketing girl's obsessed with Friends. So she's been dreaming of doing this for a while.
Good. I don't even fight it anymore.
Right.
It's like, okay, they want to do a reel. Let's get it over with.
Yep. Let's smile and wave.
I do love it though.
We actually have it in our contracts when we hire on employees, letting them know, like, you will be on social media, you will be in a music video, there will be photos.
They all think it's a joke.
They really think it's a joke. And then I'm sitting there straight faced, I'm like, oh, I'm there.
Yeah. Well,
you don't know her.
And
yet.
the fact that if your employees, much less your clients, have not been following your social media, then they really are losing out. Because I imagine people, out of curiosity, how often are people requesting to come work with you because of what they're seeing?
We get a lot of applications.
I would imagine
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. It's actually funny. We get a lot of applications to design and marketing. I mean, I think a lot of people think those jobs are going to be really fun, and they don't realize like how intense those jobs are.
Yep.
I think of design, and it's funny. We brought in
Is your interior designers in-house?
yes,
Okay.
but we've also brought in a handful of interns that are going to college for it, and every single one of them has been shocked at what goes into the job because they think they're going to meet with customers and they get to do all the fun design, picking out tile.
Yeah.
Most of it is finding prices, documenting, not documenting in a fun way, like here's the color of the tile I want to paint, actually documenting for the trades so they understand the install. Like, that's not always fun. And these interns we've had are like, oh gosh, I don't know if I want to be a designer.
It's a lot of work.
I mean, even like a video, right? I mean, the Friends episode or the theme song can't be longer than a minute 12. But I bet that took probably 5 to 10 hours, probably more than that. Probably took 2 to 3 days in thought process, design, pitching, collectively, right? Buying the props, doing all that stuff. I mean, maybe this is killing the vibe for Joe, but like if you did the ROI on that, because I'm a much smaller company and we don't do the video in house. It's like, well, man, if I edit that, I remember they did this really cool. I had someone write a song for me. I did. I don't know. Did you ever see the one where? Yeah, the guitar one. So I listened. Yeah, I think that cost me like $1,200 or $1,500 because I had to pay someone to write it. I had to hire a professional videographer to do it, and it was really cool. And I remember, and then it, it didn't even get that many likes. It was like 4,000 views or whatever. And my wife one night she goes, "How are you making money on that?" I'm like, I don't know. I really enjoyed doing it, and it was like, yeah, that's a good point. That's not actually really helping me all that much. Now, that being said, I now have taken that video and I've used it a lot for vendor collabs and like brand ambassadorships. Like I still have this idea that, like you remember the whole Real Men of Genius concept, like Real Men of Genius, and they'd have like these funny whatever. I thought it'd be really funny to do a series of that about building, how building isn't easy. And then, like a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Red Wing. They've all said no to me. I've asked all of them. But anyway, I'll keep trying to make that video eventually show some ROI. Imagine if I was on your team, poor Joe, we'd be doing a lot of Disney theme songs.
It is a really good point though, because yes, we do spend a lot of money in different, marketing areas. And it's hard to sometimes put your finger on exactly what made a client look your way or somebody that wants to come and work for you because, it might have just been the one thing that caught their eye that,
What I had, and we're going to run out of time. I just have maybe 2 questions that could take a little bit of time. But from a market, we've talked about your Instagram. I mean, ultimately, because we've been in somewhat similar paths, because I've kind of followed, obviously, we seem to have a similar vibe, which is probably why I reached out to you guys. You were in a small networking group together of some great people.
Mm-hmm.
Your platform has basically doubled in the last year. I was curious, your thought process on what do you think has kind of what's called the secret sauce? Is it, what if you had to narrow it down to 2 or 3 things, what do you think has been the secret of, let's just call it your social media success? And when I say success, I think it's success because you're growing your following, your brand is increasing, and your company is growing because people keep gravitating towards you, and your overall profile has risen quite quickly. Just curious what your thoughts on anything that you're doing or strategizing, or what it is that is working so well for you. And for those listening, is there things that they can apply to whatever business they're in that would help them as well?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, when we started this company, that was the whole thing that Joe and I had talked about. I'm like, there's different approaches to start any company in any industry. But what's very common with a builder is I'm going to do, 1 or 2 houses and really show people what I can do and kind of slowly grow your business and slowly hire on a team. And that's a great approach. But one thing that I wanted to make sure is that we came out with a bang, because we're not brand new to the industry. I mean, Joe's had over 30 years of experience. And on top of that, you know, when you talk about hiring a builder, you're not just hiring the builder in the company that's helping you design and all of that. You're hiring all their trade partners. And Joe has had 30 years of creating the perfect network of trade partners. I mean, we have, as a small builder, that's how we got through COVID and stuff. I mean, we had all these amazing people that partnered with us. So, but I wanted to make sure, I'm like, Joe, this has to be part of our startup costs. I'm like, we just have to go all in with marketing and understand that how important that is. And Joe didn't really have a background in marketing. So at first he's like, excuse me, how much are we spending on that? Because we had hired a branding company. We had hired them to do all of the stuff, kind of get us set off on the right path. And I thought that was huge for us. Since then, we have 3 full-time in-house girls that do marketing. Now, keeping in mind, they all do a little bit of everything else. So one of them is basically our office manager, handles events and does marketing more from like kind of, you know, our paper aspects or signs or anything like that. So that's kind of one side of it. We have another one who really handles all of our branding, our image, our social media. Really, most things that you see is this girl. Yep. And then we have another one who we've recently brought on to understand, like, what's all the behind the scenes stuff in marketing? Like, everyone sees a bunch of pretty pictures or fun videos and gosh, they're consistent with posting. And before I started this company, that's really all I thought it was. I'm like, hey, if we do enough, if we have enough pretty pictures, pretty houses to post, that people will eventually start following. And I learned that's not even close to the truth.
It's not, because it's funny, because there's people that I have been following for quite some time, and their following is exactly the same as it was a couple of years ago, and they have gorgeous homes.
Yeah.
You know, if you forget class or comparing yourself, but it's just they're gorgeous, and they're not engaging with an audience, and they're right. Not. I think you mentioned before a little bit, Joe, just that like if you're not evolving, you're not really. You know, if you're not constantly changing and trying to improve yourself. Right. But I think because of how quickly social media strategies change, but also what people are looking for, I think if you don't have a pulse on that, it's pretty easy to just kind of get stagnant.
It is. And what's interesting is most people think when you do a marketing campaign that you're talking to your clients. So a lot of companies will rate the success of their marketing campaign of like, okay, how many leads did I get from that? And it's actually, the world of online is so different. We are marketing, we're doing all of these things for Google. And it's a weird way of thinking about it, because if I'm marketing with that in mind and I'm speaking to Google in the way that they want me to, whether it's the behind the scenes SEO, whether it's the hashtags I'm using, whether it's the consistent posting, whatever it is, if I am doing that well, then in turn, that organic presence grows. And now your customers can see you. You're on page 1 when they're searching for custom home builders in Stillwater. You're on, popping up to the top of the feed, or on Instagram. Most people are really good at reaching their network or even their friends' friends. But how do you go beyond that? How do you go to people that you have zero connection with? And those are the things that if you can market towards Google and understand all the behind the scenes analytics, that's actually what's going to help you. And so it was just switching my way of thinking, because again, my background in sales, I'm like, okay, I do an event. How many leads did I get from this? And it's a different way of thinking.
Interesting. Last question I have for you is the podcast. You guys have a podcast as well called If These Walls Could Talk. And tell me a little bit about why you started it, who your intended audience is, and just give us an update of how it's going and what you're finding.
Well, we started the podcast to promote the book that we're writing.
Oh,
so, there's so much to building a house, right? And people don't understand that when they just want to start the process. And we thought it'd be fun to write a book and really walk them through the entire process with, what to look out for, pro tips from not only us, but our trades, people in the industry, and really a checklist that they can go by if they're building a house, or even a builder could look at this and say, gosh, I never thought of doing it this way or how to keep track of it. And it's really how we started.
Yeah.
Is it going to be like, tell me, sorry, all these questions now. Are you going to, this book, is it going to be kind of like a how-to book for homeowners? Who is the intended audience of the book? Is it for other builders, other tradespeople, for those just simply interested? Because there's so much interest in home building.
It's funny. It's actually evolved. So initially it was for builders and we're just very process oriented. So we basically took every part of our process, our checklist, and put it together as a book. And then it evolved with like, okay, as you're looking at these builder checklists like we're using, even if a homeowner wanted this book and they're looking through it, some of the stuff's not making sense to them. So we actually doubled it up. Okay, now we have a checklist for builders and now a checklist for homeowners side by side. And so when you're going through a frame walk, here's all the things your builder should be looking for. And here's all the things you should be looking for, or asking questions or pro tips. So for example, we put in there, like, every time someone does a frame walk, they are surprised at how small a room feels.
Right.
I mean, it's something everybody in the building industry knows.
Same with when your foundation goes in.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But when you dig the hole, it's like, wow, this thing is huge.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a backwards way of thinking.
Yeah.
So then your drywall goes in, it feels bigger. Then the furniture goes in, it feels even bigger. It's like, that seems backwards, but it's reality. And we, every single time, no matter how many times we warn a homeowner, freak out and like, is this office big enough? Is it even going to fit my furniture? And we say, like, this is exactly the same size as the plan. And we have to walk them through that. So we have little tips and tricks like that so they can get through a build. But it's grown.
Yeah. And what I really liked about it is we kind of got the team involved. Danielle's been always telling me, well, this isn't obvious to everybody. Even to me, I've been in the business for so long that why would you even bring this up?
I'm pre-ordering this book and I want a signed copy.
Okay.
This
You
is
got
when
it.
when is it? We don't have enough time to go through all the nuances of it. I would love to hear when it is launched. I'd love to talk to you about it again. Well, yeah, 2024. So it's coming up.
It's
coming up
coming.
early on. So yeah, we're excited. But that really is what our podcast goes through. So season 1, we had just wrapped up. So that was going through pretty much every step of the building process. And every episode ties into some sort of checklist or portion of the book.
Do you find that as you're talking about it out loud and going through the podcast that you're remaking edits like, oh, we need to add that?
Oh, 100%.
I imagine that's got to be, because it's almost like peer review live. Like you guys I'm not sure how you're writing it, but the fact that you're both talking about it, I have to imagine that would resonate with me very well. That's a genius way to write a book, by the way.
Well, and I understand now why authors take so long to actually publish, because it is always changing and you've got ideas. So we have to set deadlines for ourselves because
your podcast makes so much more sense to me now. I didn't know that because because it's maybe been 8 months, 9 months, a year. How long has the podcast been going on? About a year.
Pretty close.
So almost identical to when we started ours. And I had zero. We can talk about mine when I come on if these walls could talk. But I thought looking on like, okay, because I've listened to many of your episodes and I'm like, okay, interesting. It seemed to me that your intended audience, not knowing anything about the book, that it was for your homeowners. Because if I was a homeowner listening to your podcast, I'm like, wow, this is really informative. If I'm really be perfect with my blue-green engineer type. So I'm going to send up your podcast for sure. Because I'm personally, that's not really my skill set. I know enough to be dangerous. I'm probably a little bit more like Danielle in terms of the sales approach, right? I mean, I know how to build a house, probably know more than I think I know, but that's not really what I'm as passionate or interested about. And so this podcast is much more interested about business tactics and the stories and understanding. So I feel like now, unintentionally, I think our audience is mostly our peers. It's mostly builders, it's tradespeople, and anyone who owns a business or is interested about it. Not that my homeowners couldn't listen to it. I'm not sure how much benefit they would get from it in terms of their own house, but maybe I'm wrong.
Right. Yeah. And I think that was our intention, is truly our homeowners, is understanding like, okay, we have all this insight of what to expect during a build. And as much as we can try to tell our homeowners in meetings or emails or documents that we print out for them, we felt like a podcast would be a really good insight to, the good and the bad. I mean, we really open up on some of the challenges that you run through. So that's kind of what season 2 focuses on. Now that we've gotten through the book, through the checklist, okay, what are some major questions or pain points or confusions throughout the build that, again, seem obvious to us because we're around it all the time, but the question comes up all the time. So today we just did our siding and it was like, why is there such an argument between Hardy and LP. And so our siding, and he's talking about that and the history, and it was great because again, you try.
Oh, so you'd bring on an industry professional as like a third person interview, because early on it was just the two of you. Now you're starting to bringing in
a lot of guests right now.
I like that.
Yeah.
And it's really digging into the why of a lot of stuff too. I mean, I'm a guy who loves to sit down with the code book at night and just read the code book because I find it so interesting.
I would die.
Yeah, I also would be not interested.
But you know, why are
Obviously,
studs 16 on center? Why we have all these codes that we have to abide by, and customers don't understand always why it has to be a certain way. Well, it's because this is a safety issue. This happens this way, and I find it fascinating. And I think a lot of homeowners just don't understand. There's a lot that goes into this that we don't even have a clue about.
Right. Well, that's fascinating. We are way past time, so I'm going to wrap it up, which I knew we would be, because the three of us could talk all day. Two questions. One is, how do you guys each like to learn? I mean, as far as continuing education, we know Joe falls asleep or doesn't fall asleep reading his code book. So if you want to fall asleep, you read a shoot 'em up action book, I guess, or a fiction. How about you, Danielle?
I mean, it's a combination. I love going to like seminars or traveling, and really it's being in it. So like, I love to learn about the industry because I'm not a builder. I want to educate myself on all that goes into all of our products and stuff. So I love like walking through our trades warehouse and where everything's created. So for me, it's really in person and hands-on.
Yeah.
What about you, Joe? How do you learn?
Well, I said, interested in reading the code book, stuff like that. I do like live classes as well. But really my favorite thing to do is get out in the market and look at what other builders are doing. What's new in the market? There's things are changing so fast. Somebody's always got a better idea. And if I find one nugget when I'm walking through a house, it's gold.
Yep, I agree. I mean, if you're looking for something, I mean, it's kind of like, what is it they say? Imitation is the best form of a compliment.
Yeah,
something along those lines, right? So and I think that's true. What do you guys do for fun when you're outside of work?
Well, I've got two young kids, a 13 and a 9-year-old. So I'm usually on a lacrosse field watching a tournament or, just downtown Stillwater. I live in Stillwater. So I think that is like the best town in the world, which is why I live there. So you'd see me and my husband all the time down there at different restaurants or walking around.
Yeah, it's very, very charming.
Yeah, for me, I've got 5 grandkids already, so they keep me pretty busy. But I think my favorite thing to do is what I call travel with a purpose.
Yeah.
And that could be traveling to a city that I want to check out their baseball stadium, or a destination marathon or something like that, where I have a purpose to go to a place that I would probably never go to otherwise.
Are you running the marathon?
I don't have anything signed up, but I've done the Great Wall Marathon in China.
Really?
I've done some pretty interesting ones.
Oh, cool.
You wouldn't just go to China to go to China necessarily, but I love having a purpose for travel.
It's funny you say that. Last weekend, we just got back, my wife and I and my sister-in-law, we brought the whole family out to Whitefish, Montana, and we've been training all summer for a 50K trail race, so 32 miles up a mountain that I grew up skiing on. And so, but now after we did it, we had so much fun. It's like, honey, I just want to sign up for races like in other parts of the world and country, just so we have a reason to go there and like have an event. And then we, of course, love to travel too.
Yeah.
So she seemed pretty open to that.
We need to talk.
I agree. Great Wall. I'll have to work on that one. And then last thing, I think I might know the answer to this, is are you most excited for that's coming up here in 24? So, I mean, it sounds like the book. I know that's what I'm excited for now.
Well, what I'm most excited for is we're going to have our first home in the Artisan Home Tour.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been a dream of mine.
Will that be the spring and June of 24?
June, yeah.
Nice.
It's been a big dream of ours for two things, is to be one of the dream homes in the Parade of Homes, which we were last spring. Check. So the Artisan has been on our radar, and we're so excited. We're with a homeowner that paired perfectly with our style, and we're really excited to showcase it. So.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So our listeners can find you at Style and Structure, and obviously we'll have everything in the show notes.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having us. It's
And,
been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I guess I should probably do a plug here for our show. We have our second live event show here coming up on the 14th of November at the Lowlands. And so I think you guys may or may not be attending as well, so people can meet you in person if they want to come there as well. Join your team and become a designer or book writer or whatever they are going to do for you guys. But we're going to be interviewing Alex Lelch, and I'll have Jordan Diorio as a co-host. And so it'll be kind of a networking event. And you guys been to the Lowlands? They've had a few networking events there for some of the building that's been going around. It's a really cool spot. So
I have
been there. It's a good one. So hope to see you there. And thanks again for listening to the Curious Builder Podcast. Thanks, guys.